Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be walking through the basic steps to graph a rational function, and it's pretty simple here. We're not going to do anything really that complicated in this class, and when you go on to pre-calculus and college algebra, these functions will get harder and they'll get more difficult to work with and they'll get tougher to graph, but you know, that's just part of the deal when you go on to a harder math class. Here we're going to basically just focus on the starting steps and just get an idea of what's going on, okay? So the steps go like this. Step one is to graph the asymptotes. And so we're going to do that in both cases. We're going to start off by, like on this one here, we're supposed to graph y equals 5 over x minus 2. So to find out where the asymptotes are, like you've done in the previous videos, the first step is to just take the denominator and set it equal to 0 and solve for x. That's x minus 2 is the denominator. And so that means that x is equal to 2. That's going to be an issue because if I have 2, then I have 2 minus 2 in the function, and I have 5 divided by 0, which that's an issue. Okay, so what I know then is I have a vertical asymptote at x equals 2. And so I'm going to just draw a dotted line up and down at x equals 2. Now, the second step is to compare the degrees of x. And so I notice on the top I don't have any x at all. So if I look at the degrees, I don't have any x at all on the top, 0 power, right? And on the bottom, I have x to the first power is my higher power. And so I look at those and I say, all right, I've got a bigger power on bottom than on top. And that tells me that the horizontal asymptote, using that table from your notes, is going to be at y equals 0. And so I'm going to come over here, I'm going to put a dotted line at y equals 0. Okay, so now I've got an idea of where my asymptotes are. And I'm going to go over here and just draw a couple of examples here. There's really only a couple of ways that this could happen from here on out. Here are my asymptotes, okay? I could either have a hyperbola that looks like this, or I'm going to have a hyperbola that looks like this. Okay, now there are some, like I said, we are doing the basic examples. There are times when it could be up on the top on both sides or down on the bottom of both sides. And there's even some examples where maybe we get a hyperbola that like comes down and it dips below and then it comes back and approaches the asymptote, okay? So that stuff occurs, but for the most part, here are the types of graphs you're gonna see, okay? For this class, this is what you're going to see. So our job is just to figure out which one are we looking at, right? And so I'm gonna just come over here, I'm gonna plot a few points. It's going to be very simple. For example, x coordinate of 3 would be right here. What would happen if I put 3 into the equation? Well, 3 minus 2 is 1, and 5 divided by 1 is 5. So I know, for instance, if I wanted to build a chart right here, for instance, that if I put a 3 in, then I'm going to get a 5 out because it's 5 divided by 1. So I'm going to go over 3 and up 5. I put a dot, and it looks like, you know what? Looks like it's going to be that thing right there, right? Okay. What if I put a 4 in? Well, if I put a 4 in, then I have 4 minus 2 on the bottom, which is 2. And so I have 5 over 2. So I have 5 halves, or 2.5, right? And so I'm going to come over here to 4. I'm going to go up to 2.5, and I'm going to graph it. And I can kind of see this curve starting to happen. It looks like it's going to do something like this. So for the sake of time, we're just going to, you know, fill that in. Now, here's the thing. We're going to mirror it on both sides. So if I go over 1 and up 5, I'm going to come over 1 and down 5 over here. In other words, what happens if I choose a point like 1 or 0? Okay, if I choose 1, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. So now I'm down here. And I can see that the thing basically just mirrors itself. My suggestion to you would be use your graphing calculator and use the table. Plot some points, right? But there you go. Real simple steps. Graph the vertical and horizontal asymptotes. Figure out how our curves lie using the table. And I'm never going to make you do this without a calculator. Let's do one more, okay? All right, where's the vertical asymptote here? I'm going to take x plus 2, that's the bottom. I'm going to set it equal to 0. That gives me an x coordinate of negative 2. That's going to be the issue, right? So I come over here, I go like this, and I draw my line at x equals negative 2. Notice I didn't care at all about the x plus 4, right? We'll get into that later. Second thing I want to do then is I want to compare powers of x. And so I see here that I have x to the first on top and I have x to the first on bottom, so that means it's the same power. In this case, I'm looking at the coefficients, right? So it's 1 over 1. So that means that if I look at the coefficients, 1 over 1 is 1. So y equals 1 is going to be where my horizontal asymptote is located. So I'm going to draw a dotted line at y equals 1. Notice these go in 2s, so that's halfway up that first grid box, right? Now, my job is to figure out which one of these two do I probably have, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say, all right, let's pick a coordinate, an easy one. Let's do 0. That's an easy one. If I put in 0, I have 0 plus 4 over 0 plus 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 0, 2, if I'm making a table, 0, 2 is one of my coordinates. All right, that's a dot right here. What if I put out a 2? What if I put 2 in? 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 plus 2 is 4. 6 over 4, which is 3 halves, or 1.5. So I'm going to get 1.5 there, right? 2, 1.5. And you can see the dot looks like it's going to do something like this, doesn't it? And on the other side, it's probably going to mirror. For the sake of time, I know I could go and I could plot. I really should plot on the other side. If this is -2, pick out like -4. Okay, we'll just do it real quick. What if I do -4? -4 plus 4 is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. So -4, 0. And I can see I'm down below. I really should plot or use my calculator, do something in order to figure out what the graph looks like, but it's going to look like that. So those are the basic steps. Figure out your asymptotes, then figure out your curves. And as long as you follow those basic steps, you guys will be just fine as you're working these problems.